Alright gang, we're in Module 5. Welcome to Video 2. And in this second video, we're going to talk about the escape sequence I mentioned in that first video in Module 5. And we're also going to talk about concatenation. It's about a $15 word, and it's a very simple concept. Now, the escape sequence. We saw it above, and the \n means new line. \t means tab. So there are a list of them, and I pulled them up here in the w3schools.com in their website. So here's some of the common ones. \\, is actually a backslash. \, single quote is a single quote. \, double quote is a double quote. There's a number of different ones. \b is a backspace. So we've got a variety of different ones. And there will be times that you want to display something that means something special in the code, or it's a special key that you would normally deal with on the keyboard that now you don't see it. So there's a special escape sequence for that character, or for that whatever it may be, new line. And it's traditionally there's special characters. So they've got an example up here of a string, literal constant, you see it, but they want to put quotation marks around the word Vikings. And to be able to do that, we have to use the escape sequence followed by double quotes. Now if I come over here, here's that code. Text equals we are so-called Vikings from the north, print text, and here's what it came out with. And you see the double quotes. Now, if I did not put that \, this would not have come out that way. It would have had a problem. Okay. So, with that said, there are a number of times that you're going to have to deal with some special character or some escape sequence. So you're going to have to get familiar with this. The most common one you'll see is \n. I don't use \t all that much, except if I'm going to indent something. We've got the single quote, the double quote, as we showed in that example. 2 backslashes ends up being just a single \. So, with that said, it's a fairly straightforward concept. I'll have some examples in one of the notebooks down at the bottom of this module. And aside from that, let's go look at concatenation. What is concatenation? All right, if you think back to the first video, let's just previous to this one, first video in Module 5, we talked about a string, and I compared a string to a train, a railroad train. Now, train has an engine, and it has 0 or some cars. May have 0, may have 1, may have 25. Could have a finite number, up to a certain number of cars on that train. Now, essentially, we can add trains together and treat them as a single train. And how we're going to go about doing that is this, as we spoke in the previous video is a string literal constant. Oh, hang on. I had to have that closing. I prefer, as I said before, use double quotes on these. This is a string literal constant. So you have strings, two of them. They're literally going to get printed out exactly as you see them. And they're constant. They do not change. They're not a constant piece of data. They're a string literal constant. We talked about it before. They're literals. Now, with these literals, I can combine them together just like I connected two trains. Now, when I connect them, it lets go of, if they were variables, it would let go of the names. So we'll just deal with it as the train cars themselves. We take these cars and we connect them or concatenate them with these train cars. And now they become a new sequence of cars, and they do not add a space in between like the comma does, how we saw that before. Now, that's how we take them and combine them. I talked before in the previous video about the print method. And I can pass arguments to the print method. Now, there's a couple of ways I can deal with what I pass to the print method. I can pass the print method this string literal constant, comma, this one. And if I do that, it'll add a space in between. Or I can pass it everything that you see here. It takes that, concatenates it together in a single argument, not separated by commas, in a single argument, and treats it as one single argument that's been concatenated together, and there is no space in between other than the one that's part of that first string you see there. So that's one way. Or what we would do traditionally a lot of times is just put the comma in between the arguments. But got to keep in mind that when I do that, and if they are multiple strings, it's going to add that space in there. So these two string literal constants were displayed one following the other, but they were not concatenated. They were displayed sequentially, but they were not concatenated. Same thing here. Displayed sequentially, but that's not concatenation. That's just displaying something literally. Now, I'd prefer, if you want to display something, that you don't do it this way. Use the print method. Use some functionality to do the work for you. So, with that said, let's come down and we'll look at some other things here. We've declared a variable. We know that because of the case of those letters right there. We've initialized it with some value. Now, what did we put in it? Well, what happens here is, because we wrapped it up in parentheses, the computer says, all right, I'm going to take whatever's in parentheses. And we've dealt with how important parentheses are in previous modules. So we wrapped it in parentheses. We passed it this string this string, this string, this string, and this string. This is implicitly concatenating these all together and storing them in this variable. It's done implicitly. It's not concatenating explicitly. It's doing it implicitly. So it knew what we wanted to do, and it went and did it for us. We've got other examples here where we take a string, we store it in this variable, we take whatever's in that variable, and we put a copy of it in this other variable called B. Take another string, we store it in C. A, concatenated together with B, concatenated together with C. That's what's taking place here, concatenation. It's not math, it's concatenation because of the data type. They are all treated as one string. On this part, this is different. This goes back to that example I was talking about a little earlier. We are passing multiple arguments. What's the difference between passing multiple arguments and that concatenation? Concatenation does not add a space in between them. The print method, by passing multiple arguments, does add that space in there. And it could make a difference depending on how we're dealing with displaying something, what the output looks like, and how things appear is important. In other classes, I use some software called MindTap. It's a Cengage product, and I've just done away with it in this class. Up to summer of 2022, I had used this for this class. Faithfully, I use MindTap for this class every term. And there was a lot of exercises that you were graded on doing. I don't want to burden you with work beyond something you're familiar with. So in this class, I've got notebooks. You take your time. You know how much time you need based on how comfortable you are with it. Go play with these concepts. Test yourself and see what happens if I do this. I like to call it exploring. Go explore. See what happens when you try different things. It's the only way you'll find out what works and what doesn't work is if you go play with it and try. There's no limit on how much time you can spend just going in and exploring with programming code. So you'll have, in this module, you'll have a notebook, plenty of things you can go explore and play with. Get familiar with how things work and what happens when you change things around and the different escape sequences. All right. So I'm going to see you in the next video. That'll be 5-3, where we pick up with this duplication, and I'll talk more about what indexing is and where we start counting at 0. And we'll give those train cars an index. And we'll also talk about how we output things in special string output formatting. So I'll see you in the next video.